Hello and welcome to today's episode of Flex That Works. Today, Graham and myself are joined by Suzanne Murdock from the Hub in Newry. Hi, Suzanne. So nice to have you here with us.
Hey, Anne-Marie. Hi, Graham.
Would you like to give our listeners an introduction to yourself, Suzanne?
Of course. So I'm Suzanne Murdock, a heart-led coach, mentor, and long-time operator of the Hub Newry, which is a small but mighty network of neighbourhood co-working spaces here in Northern Ireland, right on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic. And my work sits very much in the intersection of people, place, community, and those practical systems. And through my coaching, I support micro-business owners and independent co-working operators, very much creating sustainable human ways of working that fit with the real-life capacity, energy, and time that people actually have. And I guess if I tell you a little about my origin story and how this has all been shaped, growing up with a very small family, we moved from quite a high-pressurised environment back in London to the border town of Newry back in 2009 with two very young, small children, no support network, no cultural roadmap, a lot of uncertainty around that whole sense of belonging. Working from a porter cabin back then whilst we were building a house and juggling childcare, isolation, and quite an obvious outsider as soon as I opened my mouth with my accent. So I guess it was both, I don't know, that I had that feeling of being quite grounded but disorientated in equal measure, leaving friends and family behind and a lot of people knowing the obvious troubles in this area as history. But that's how, well, I guess, what planted the seed for building the Hub and made me really aware of the emotional load that people carry when they're starting from scratch, both from a personal and a business perspective, and how powerful it is to build these co-working spaces where people can feel safe. You know, they build that trust, and we're laying the foundations for that and the genuine, meaningful human connections. And what's lovely about our community is that we still have a lot of the community that we started out with back in 2012, and we've seen each other's children grow up. So quite recently we've got like a second generation of Hub members who've grown up, got their own jobs, and they're based here too. So yeah, we grew out of those lived experiences into very much people first co-working spaces, championing belonging, long-term relationships, the hyper local communities and partnerships alongside the whole evolution of co-working over the last 10 years. But it's been really affirming in a way that the way we do things is that blend of care, community and structure, that this year we were recognised and selected as one of the UK small business hubs. That was a lovely moment of validation, I guess, for us, and a very human-centred approach that we deliver here.
Suzanne, talking about the human-centred approach, it sounds that you're getting all the results of the human-centredness of it, if you like, you know, having such a long-term sustainable community. Community is one of those words, and Anne-Marie's probably heard me talk about it. It's been overused to the extent where in a lot of instances it's almost become a marketing buzzword for some spaces. You know, talk to me about how you built that community and the deliberate things you did to maintain it.
Yeah, I think at the start there wasn't that community, which is that was very much obvious to me, and very much the reason we started this. And back in 2012, co-working was very new, especially in Northern Ireland. We were one of the first here. So understanding that concept, just for me, was a big deal, trying to get my head around that, and then getting that concept out slowly but surely. Other small business owners who perhaps had grown up here, gone away for quite a while and come back, didn't know anyone. And similarly, people who'd never worked here before, they joined us one by one. And back then it was very much freelancers, one-man bands, solopreneurs. And then they grew quite organically over time, and they needed bigger spaces. So we had our second space open, but alongside that, it was the co-working community in the industry itself. So there was kind of there was the member makeup of our space, and then the whole co-working evolution, and we kind of all grew together. other local co-working operators, learning on the job, very much forging those relationships and the trust. But I think it always comes back to the local community for me, and working alongside other businesses, not necessarily in our space, but looking at what they need. And it is that trust and that meaningful connection, and knowing each other as families as well as new parents. That was a big deal for us, and
You
all
were
the
all in a
unknowns that come
similar,
with it. Yeah.
you were
And
all in a
you don't
similar
know
stage in life.
similar
like, yeah.
stages, and you don't know what you don't know, whether it's business or personal life. So there was that whole sense of we're in it together type thing.
Yeah.
And it's always been like that.
And with the concept of co-working, I mean, it's obviously been mainstreamed post-COVID. I only got involved in co-working back in 2016, and even then, I found myself having to explain the concept to people. And post-COVID, obviously, that preamble education part didn't need to happen anymore. You're way back when you're starting. Yours in 2009. You said, like, where did you see the concept? Did you see the concept? Was it something you'd kind of seen the beginnings of, and kind of, I mean, now there's playbooks almost on how to set up co-workers, but you were going into this, dare I say, not blind, but certainly there wasn't that amount of support and recognition and even awareness of co-working. I'd love to understand where you were at that stage, where you kind of came up with the idea.
It's an interesting question. So my husband was from Newry originally, and he is very much involved in commercial real estate, and he'd done a bit of travelling, had seen the whole concept in Europe. And we renovated what was then an old city bar, the top floor of a city bar, and it was a big open plan area. And we needed to get out of this porter cabin, but at the same time, it was too big for the both of us. So we thought, this could be interesting. It could fix a few issues for us here. So it was, as I said, a big open plan space. And going out back then, I think we had to understand who our audience was and who we wanted to be aligned with. And it was other people who didn't necessarily know the area, perhaps had young kids. Then they had to navigate the whole family dynamic, schools, etc., as well as business unknowns and not having those connections and the support. And I think it was those areas that I really tried to hit home on. And the whole heartfelt thing of that lack of belonging. And that we're a support network, we're here for the bricks and mortar, the whole structure, but then the structure of how you actually build your business as well. There wasn't that framework of exactly what co-working was. It was really evolving, and everyone did it differently.
So I mean, it must have been, I said, you'd seen it in the continent, probably Germany, I think, so would probably be one of the more mature markets. It's probably where you probably saw it. I mean, how did you get your first client? Obviously, your husband was in corporate real estate. He had an awareness of it. You had the assuredness and certainty because you'd seen it. Nobody had seen it. What was the pitch like? What was the, trying to, get people on board? Because I know across the island of Ireland, we had enterprise centres, and they were very much closed doors. What were the kind of things you were saying to people to get them on board with the idea of being at a desk with everybody else, phone calls going off, and how did you break down those? How did you answer those questions?
It was very hard. We did get a few people laughing at us and saying, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
But I think it was going out to networking groups back then. Not necessarily cold calling on the phone. That didn't work at all. And doing it was Facebook back then as well, and telling the stories of how it was really helping us. And the first person we had on board was from one of the networking groups, and he was a videographer. And similarly had grown. No, he was from England. He had come to the area, had a young family, and came to join us. And then, so we watched him grow over a few months. Then we got an architect. Again, he'd grown up here but gone away to Australia and had a young family and come back. So they were all very similar threads, and it was building on those stories and the relationships. So that was very much the message that I was bringing home. But yeah, that has been the thread all along, has been the relationship side and the whole organic side of it.
For the sake of the conversation, can you describe Newry to us as a town?
So Newry is right on the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic, with Dundalk on one side to Renow, between Dublin, Belfast. I think there's around, I'm not very good on the population. It's a small city, got city status there a couple of years back. Yeah, very much made up of self-employed small businesses. We have a couple of big corporates as well. We've Statsports were with us for quite a while at the beginning as well. Norbrook, First Derivatives. So there's quite a big corporate element as well. And there's a big skill set here in terms of IT, financial systems, a lot of music talent as well. What else can I tell you?
No, I'm just trying to get an understanding of, as I said, here you are with this new concept, and you're starting to see people migrate back to Newry a bit. You did the break-even charts and the business planning and the forecasts, and did your business planning and research stack up in the end to what you'd anticipated?
I could say yes, but we didn't have a business plan. I'll be completely honest.
That's okay.
I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do a business plan for that, because I didn't even know what it was that I was doing.
That's all right.
That's probably the most relatable thing to a lot of operators.
Exactly. There's no point me lying on this, because I've told this story a few times, and no, I can't go back.
But there's a level of deliberateness to what you did, right?
Yeah.
But what we see time and time again is, have this business. We're a digital marketing agency. We have 5 people. We had enough desks for another 15 just to cover the overheads. We've got another 15 people, and now we're a co-working space that works from. Now we're a digital marketing agency that works from a co-working space that we set up by accident. So the accidental co-worker. So you were slightly more deliberate in your approach. So I was wondering if there was a pounds and pennies business plan type of approach to it, but yeah.
In that, we had to cover our overheads, definitely, and we had to make a margin. I needed to get paid somehow, yeah, but it was very much about building that community. And we had to be quite flexible at the beginning, because on the one hand, we didn't quite know how this whole model would work, but we had to be flexible in terms of hot desking, dedicated desks. And then we started the whole virtual office mailbox thing, which helped in terms of cash flow, and it gave people options as well, and also helped build that story about what co-working was and the flexibility of it. And then as the member businesses started to grow, that was then when we started evolving our spaces with some private office spaces, and then we had our second space. And that's when it really took off.
It seems like the community element and the fact that your members were based in or around Newry and stayed with you for so long has been a core part in shaping the space and the community and the culture there.
Yeah, very much so. And the other element is because we are on the border, and it's very well placed between Dublin, Belfast airports as well, and quite big businesses, and it's central. We get a lot of people travelling over the border, and we also have a lot of people who are living in the Republic who might be employed in the UK, even in England and the mainland, but they want to be based still in Ireland. They don't want to have to fly over, but they need that UK IP address. So we've grown quite a lot that way.
Yes. I'm curious how, and we'll no doubt jump a little bit between kind of present day and where we're at now in the market and your story, Suzanne. We love to always try to keep the operator front of mind when we're having these chats for Flex That Works, so that we're giving people really practical tips and things. I'm curious with how the market has evolved now, how you think somebody starting out today, how their experience might be parallel to yours, what you think would be similar if somebody was starting out today that you'd recommend they repeat or they do again, and in what ways you think it could be really different.
And I suppose that there'll always be an element of, it wasn't like that when I started. we hear anybody who's been in
opportunity too.
Anybody who's been in co-working more than 10 years, they'll always tell you they've been co-working more than 10 years. We were there first. It's different now to when I started. So yeah, to that point, like, what would you do differently, and what's available to people starting co-working spaces that wasn't there before, do you think?
I think it comes back to understanding why you're doing it and what your strengths are and who you align with. Because a lot of people still fall into it in that they have their own business, but they need to maybe make a bit more. So they think, oh, we'll open up a co-working space. But you have to understand the business model behind it, like you said, Graham, that it's not just that bricks and mortar and bringing rent in. It's that whole people element, which is massive now. And, I know they discuss that a lot in Berlin and Coworking Europe, and in the Connected Hub Summit the other week. You have to align yourself with the right audience. So I don't know, that might be corporate remote workers. It could be local freelancers. You have to really get those people. And then industry-wise, what industry do you work in? Do you want to be attracting diverse members? But always coming back to your strengths and your alignment, because that's where your magic is. That's what you can bring to the table. You have to be engaging with those members constantly. And I don't think that's ever going to change. And then obviously the software, the access systems, AI, that all plays into it massively, and it frees you up that time to give your member community and grow. But for me, it's always coming back to the members and understanding them, building those relationships, understanding who they are, what do they need, what are their nuances, so that you can market those as well. You can evolve your offerings to what they need and understand them to such a level that you're almost anticipating changing requirements before they do.
Would you have said no to many people when you were starting out? Because I'm conscious this is something that can come up for operators if you're in a slightly smaller place where there's not a huge amount of choice. Sometimes the thing that brings your audience together in one place, the thing they have in common is the fact that there's a co-working option near them, and that's why they're all in there together. There aren't enough options in the area to have one for corporate people or one for creatives or one for, and did you have to go through a period of time, or maybe that happens now, maybe there are more options now and you have to say no to people at times? Is it something you do to kind of cultivate the community a bit?
Back when we started, no, I didn't turn people away. I guess I didn't really have that self-awareness and that whole, I didn't even know what alignment and values were back then, to be honest. I think it was just a case of, we want to get to know people, we want to fill our desks. But when you've got those people in especially an open plan area, who are on the phone really loud and they're clashing with other people, you realise, okay, you can't keep letting everyone into your space. So there comes a time when it was really just before COVID hit, we implemented ISO quality management systems for small SME co-working operators to really help bring in those procedures, the online onboarding, and really bringing people in before they signed up, so that we could get to know each other. What's going to work? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And often the space isn't right for them. They might talk to our members. I think that's really important, talking to other members before people join. But never saying, okay, right off, no, this isn't going to work for you. Perhaps it's the whole co-working element that isn't going to work. Maybe the private office doesn't work, but here there's a space around the corner or not so far away that you might be a better fit for. I think it's just being open and honest but genuine, doing it in a nice, friendly way.
That mirrors what we hear from people quite a bit, for sure. How do you think, Suzanne, it's different for people opening a space or running a space in a more rural or a small town type of area versus a city?
It keeps coming back to that word community, doesn't it? Everyone quite often knows everybody and everything. And I think that whole culture and the onboarding process is even more important then, to make sure they understand how everything works. Are they the right fit? Do they really grasp the concept of how this space works and how everybody gels? Are they willing to be a part of something? And it's not necessarily a personality clash. You can have people working in the whole ecosystem that are perhaps introverts. They don't want to get involved in all the events, but they know there's that support system there if they want to tap into it. I think it's that constant check-in and understanding who wants what. That whole engagement piece is even more crucial there. And also working in a wider ecosystem with the other businesses and community organisations in the rural areas.
You mentioned the onboarding piece, and I'm keen to understand the physical onboarding side of it. And you talk about introducing members, and if I was to head up yourself today and I was interested in taking a dedicated desk off you, Suzanne, what does that look like for me as Graham coming to your space?
So you would meet me. I'd probably initially speak to you on the phone, or downstairs and we organise a time for you to come in. It's actually only me. We're a very small team. We outsource quite a bit here. So you'd come along, I'd give you a tour, grab a cup of coffee, you'd speak to different members, see what's going on. And I generally sit down with people just to understand more about their business, how it works, what they're looking for, go through the different facilities that we have, because they might say they want a private office space, but a desk might be better for them, or the flip side, especially if they haven't worked in a co-working space before. If they wanted to sign up, they have to send over a bit of information and we put them through the onboarding software system and they sign up. And then there's a whole separate onboarding welcome system on the day that we go through.
What kind of questions, when you're doing the onboarding and the tour of the space, what kind of questions are you getting these days as opposed to what you might have been getting pre-COVID?
How long do we sign up for is the main one. What businesses, what is the member makeup? What other businesses do we work with? Am I tied to this space? There's a lot of what ifs, which I think reflects very much the economy right now. What other businesses are in the local area? And we do get quite a few corporate remote workers interested now. And what doesn't seem to be changing over the last few years is who's paying for the membership. Is it the corporates or is it the employer? So they'd have a lot of questions around that. That seems to have been quite consistent over the last few years. I'd say it's 50-50. And then if they're living in the south, but they're going to be working here or they're working for a UK employer, the whole tax, how does the tax system work?
Yeah.
That's very unique to you, isn't it?
That is a unique element. The big question about who pays for my desk if you're working for somebody, if you're not. No, it was probably easier when it was all freelancers and self-employed people. They would just get their invoices and it would all be sorted.
Yeah.
But when somebody else is picking up the bill, and we see that question happen every now and again. And we're kind of saying that you nearly need to sell it to the employee to upsell it again onto their paymaster, if you like, for want of a better expression. And it's just it makes no sense to me personally for employees to be paying for it. I'm sure you'd agree, because in order for them to pay it, they're paying out of the taxed income already, which means it has a bigger effect on their bottom line, their personal bottom line, when all they're trying to do is put themselves in a more productive area, or productive place where they can get more focused work done. And then you have the employer who gets all the VAT back on it, it gets taken straight off the office and expense, and now they have a staff member working in a more productive and ergonomically fixed place anyway, a friendly place.
Even if when the employee is paying for it, but they still have to commute to their place of work 2 days a week, or some cases they have to fly over to England 2 days a week. Yeah. And the other thing is that whole compliance piece. We have to go through HMRC, anti-money laundering regulations, and getting all of that compliance done as well. So there's a lot of conversation around that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. But again, one of the other conversations I keep having with people is if you take somebody on in a fully hybrid manner, as an employer, you're obliged to make sure that they're sitting on a proper desk with a proper chair, and they have correct lighting. All, as I said, all the ergonomics are covered off. That's all taken off the. And the thing is, if they leave after 6 or 8 months, how do you get all that equipment back? Do you bother getting all that equipment back? It's just a nightmare. Well, I think you've probably seen that as well.
Yeah, that's another question we get is, do we have to bring our own equipment in? Do we bring monitors? All of that. And they generally end up bringing their own monitors, etc. But, all the structural things, infrastructure, like you say, the employers don't really understand. There needs to be a playbook there. Connected hubs are very good at that sort of thing as well. Fair play to.
They do, in fairness. They listen to, again, they listen to all the questions that everybody's getting asked on the ground, and they try to, all these questions, there's valid answers and valuable answers to all of these things. And I think the more people that are not working in the bedroom as much as they are, and then co-working spaces, everybody wins. Local economies win, everybody's mental health wins. It's nothing like getting in, having a cup of coffee and shooting a breeze with somebody when you've not spoken a person in a day or two.
Do you know what? Even through COVID, I came in every day because we had the mailbox registered office address thing, so I had to sort the post out, and we had 1 or 2 other people in who it was very difficult for, but they were in their own private offices, so we didn't mix at all. But, just knowing that there was someone next door, there was another human being, you could tap on the window, it just brought a lot of reassurance.
The human connection piece cannot be underestimated. And I think, we saw that in Berlin last week. There was so much conversation around tech and AI naturally. And I think it's really becoming known now that if anything, it's just going to increase the value of humans, and you'll never be able to replicate the energy that you get off being around people. And you can see that even at the events. As work and the future of work continues, that is the piece that's going to make sure people figure out what co-working is and learn what co-working is. Because there's this whole addressable market in this space. And I think you've spoken about this in the past, Suzanne. There's a whole addressable market of people who don't know what co-working is even yet. And we're out here looking for the same customers as operators. We're thinking about competition and looking in the same pool of customers. But there's actually a whole other addressable market of people who just need to be educated on what's available to them in their locality. And they need to be given some sort of an invitation or an opportunity to try it and go in a new door, and meet a few new faces. And it can open up a whole other chapter of life, like when people do that.
Yeah, it's like we need like an evolving playbook that moves with the whole industry, because it is moving so quickly from the software AI and the people perspective and what we're offering there in hospitality, certainly the bigger multi-branded spaces. But I think there's a massive piece there. I'd love to talk about Berlin as well, but I think there's a massive piece there for the likes of you guys who offer simplicity in softwares, especially for SME, independent co-working space owners, because they haven't got that time and that bandwidth to get up to speed with new infrastructure or the costs of it and ratcheting it up after a certain member base. There's a whole big piece there.
You're speaking our language. That's our basics offering. And we do have flat pricing. So you just pay per location. Doesn't matter if you've got 5 people or 500 people. Yeah, that was something our founders, Graham and his co-founder, felt really strongly about, that operators weren't being penalised for their growth, and that you're basically, there are things only a human can do. Tech is not coming to do the things that only a human can do. It's coming to do the things that you shouldn't be putting your time into because you're too valuable. Your time is better spent elsewhere, making those human connections, building that community. And to speak of Berlin, I think a lot of people, it was my first time there, right? So I was very curious about what people who've been going many, many years would think about it. And I was chatting with the organisers and, what inspired the agenda this year and all of that. And we'd also been at Prop Tech London a couple of weeks ago, which maybe not the most obvious alignment for its co-working software.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Providers. Oh my God, I think that's the biggest event I've been to, and that's saying a lot because I've done loads of industry events over the years.
Everyone I know that has been has said that.
Yeah,
no, the gadgets were class.
The gadgets were class. The energy was really high, and it brought together, like, the agenda was packed, and there were people there from like community and co-living spaces, and there was like real estate and kind of, real estate mobiles, if you like. So
commercial. It was all elements of it, and
very different mindsets, which was really, really interesting. And lots of panels and talks and a lot of different, it wasn't just high level talks, there was a lot of panel discussions where you got to meet a lot of people across the industry who were all put on stage and given a chance to chat. And I can say the same for Berlin. Even though there were only 2 days there in the agenda, they made sure to put on a couple of panels that got a lot of faces and names on the stage. And there was a lot of different perspectives shared then as a result across Europe, the US, UK, Ireland. There was an awful lot shared over the few days. The piece I was going to share there was about, the CRE element coming in, the real estate element coming in. We're all seeing it, and the property side of things, where that blends with operators. The traditional co-working aspect feels like at times it's on the other end of the spectrum a little bit. As tech providers, we're sitting somewhere in between, but all these people are still part of our audience. And then the community piece and the human element is the thread running through it all, and all these relationships are changing. What I'm hearing is operators are dealing with their landlords in a different way. You've people who run real estate and developers coming into the industry who've never been in it before, and they have a very different lens, and finding a way that ultimately pushes the industry forward overall, because it's happening whether we like it or not. It seems to be happening at a crazy rate, and everyone's finding their feet in it. I'd be keen to hear your take on it.
Yeah, and I think partnerships is a key thing as well. We've seen the merging of hotels, co-working, local business. I think in terms, like, I look at it from an SME perspective, independent co-working spaces. That's essentially what I am. I think there's more and more emphasis for SMEs put on the whole ecosystem, working side by side with local businesses, local charities. I think there's a big piece there, and how that can really strengthen what you have to offer and strengthen your members' businesses. But really, also on the flip side, bring those skills out into the wider community. And I think it's really important that as SMEs, we also partner with the bigger branded spaces and learn from them, and vice versa. I think we can give so much to each other, which isn't always apparent at these conferences, because I know a lot of them can be corporate focused. But I think the more and more I speak to the people through podcasts, through relationships that we've built over the years, that's really important. That whole two-way conversation.
I think one of the key things you said there was the vice versa, and the learning from what seems to have happened is you have the big chains and the big brands, and I sat in on a talk, and they were described as the leaders in the industry, which makes sense if you're talking about square footage and profit and loss and valuations. They're the leaders in that sense, and they're leaders in driving awareness of the industry. But the other side of it is to drive those process-based businesses, some of the magic falls out. And they're just focused on what they can do, which is hospitality is the word I kept hearing when you're talking to the larger ones. And community, if it happens, is almost a hopeful byproduct. There didn't seem to be, from the ones I heard from now, there didn't seem to be any deliberate focus on their members. We were talking a lot of, again, the language is changing. We're going co-working, flex work. Desks are now workstations. That was another one. Like, we're talking workstations now, and now we're talking offices with workstations, and you're talking management agreements, lease agreements. There's different models and how you shape it and all of that. So I think, and this comes with any business, you need to define yourself what success looks like for you and your business and what you're setting out. I mean, Suzanne, I presume when you set up the hub in Newry, success wasn't having it all over the UK. It was getting it up, getting it set, finding your tribe, finding your people, getting a sense of belonging for you. Your and again, forgive me in this, but your reason for setting up was almost a personal and selfish reason, and you got all the and I mean selfish in the best way possible. You got all this great and wonderful community around you, in a community that you were new to, and now you're a part of it, and you're sharing it, and you're building on that. And I think that's very hard to do in a city-based, metropolitan-based global operator with a very well-known brand above the door. I think that's very hard to achieve what you're achieving there in one of these spaces. And it's totally different clientele, so maybe that's not the goal. Maybe it never will be the goal.
No, for me, initially that was the goal. The whole pain points were isolation, which we saw for other people as well that were coming to us. So it was almost a shared. There were shared pain points.
You were kind of a leader in it. Like there was loads of you experiencing the pain, and then you led on a solution. Yeah.
But I think it's also very important for co-working operators to look at the landscape of where they're working. How is it made up? Is it small businesses? Is it more corporates? And to really reflect that and what those businesses need. I mean, we've got our budget tomorrow with the lovely Rachel Reeves. Is she looking at who is bringing in her taxes, and is she listening to them about what they need? Or I don't know. Jury's out on that. We'll see tomorrow. But the same goes for operators. Are you giving your members what they really need? Are you listening to them? Are you understanding their requirements? And that goes back to why you set up in the first place, and how you keep going is a crucial element of it. And I think that should be mirrored as well in a lot of the conferences is, what's your member makeup of the audience at the conferences. You have to speak to them, even if the SMEs are only 10, 20%. They're still there. They're buying tickets. They're there for a reason. You've invited them. So talk to them, help them, and help each other engage two-way.
They're obviously doing really well, these guys from operators and SMEs, if they're able to get in the room. They've got their processes and systems in place enough that they can make space for themselves to go to these events. So they're the successful ones, you know, they're part of the successful ones. I'm curious, with your work with the European Coworking Assembly, how's that going? How's it evolving? Where do you see things moving?
Yeah, they're doing some great work. They were doing some work with ResMove. I got involved last year trying to help map the island of Ireland with the co-working spaces and community groups and what was being offered here. And then there was other European countries. So it was like a whole big European map. And within that, they were trying to build layers of what types of flex co-working spaces. Were they enterprise? Were they rural hubs? And then what were they offering? So that when we had people who were moving into the areas, they could click and look at the different offerings, but also on the flip side, we could help them. And there was a lot of funding for that. Now I know it's moved on to the next stage, so I'll learn a bit more about that in the next couple of weeks. But rural co-working is a big project that they're trying to expand as well, and co-living. It's really exciting. You've literally got people from all over Europe participating in the co-working assembly, and they're such a lovely relationship. They're very open, very honest, authentic, very grounded.
Yeah. What we found about, I suppose, obviously the breadth of our user type is everything from urban to rural to suburban to not-for-profits, for-profits, big brands, small brands, independent scaling brands, all that kind of stuff. What I always find about the rurally based ones, it's generally headed by somebody who's incredibly passionate about the place they're from. And and it's that human-centered passion and love for their locality that they bring to the space. And then that in itself creates this magnetism that just draws others. So I can understand why. And the thing is, I've spoken to people in rural Ireland from a co-working perspective and from small towns that kind of feel underserved and maybe not reaching their full potential. They have more to offer. It's the same in Bavaria. It's the same in Slovenia. It's the same, in Western France, Finland, or New Zealand, even all these places that are kind of fighting the good fight for rural villages and towns. And the great thing about it now is, and I think here at home in Ireland with Connected Hubs piece, we've proven that, you don't have to be involved in agriculture or tourism or any, urban or rural centred industry in order to now live and take all the advantages of living in a rural area, Like myself and Anne-Marie, we work for a software company. We both live literally not in the middle of nowhere, the end of the earth is what we say. Anne-Marie's the skull on a rock. Yeah, like next stop, next stop to Anne-Marie is New York, pretty much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's it's great to see that happen and great to hear it's happening European wide now.
Yeah, and Grow Remote as well is a fantastic organisation.
Really is.
You've probably come across them, and they would be really on board with that whole hybrid way of working. That's what their whole philosophy is, and I know they do a lot of promoting for remote jobs as well, and partner up with some amazing organisations.
Speaking of growth, one thing I'd love to ask you about, I know that you are also working in the space of coaching yourself, of course, taking all of your knowledge out to support SMEs. And I was curious, as an operator, when I've heard loads of people describe themselves as mom and dad over the last few days of their space, that the place can't run without them. And it kind of runs, but it's not the same if they're not there. And then they get back and clean up the mess that the kids made when they were gone. So, and I know you've opened more than one space with the Hub. So I guess that was your first kind of experience of having to loosen the apron strings, but at least it was still within Newry. Now you're expanding it with your
Yes.
coaching business. You've taken time out to be part of the assembly. Like Suzanne as, a profile or maybe a brand, just you personally, you are on your own journey too. And that's something that I guess if anybody has had the leadership and the insight to go ahead and open a space, at some point they're probably going to come to that point. So what was that journey like for you personally, realizing that you wanted to branch out outside the baby a little bit and start, building your world in other ways?
It felt scary in one way, but natural in another, because I think running the space so long and being part of, I count myself as a member as well, just the way we all work together.
Yeah.
You're naturally coaching and mentoring a lot of the members day to day anyway, without even realising. And yes, we have a second space, but we're lucky in that my husband actually works from that space as well. So he's always on board. Yes, I coach and mentor, but I'm still here. I haven't gone anywhere. And I think we're lucky that we've had members so long that I used to call myself Mother Hubber, but we also have a couple of other members who are equally Mother Hubbers. And, they know the way things run. They'll answer the door if needs be. We have quite a few access systems. So generally, it's not an issue. People know where I am. Albeit I've put I am recording a podcast sign on my door today, so go away.
No sticky hands.
No, but I think for me it comes back to the fact that I'm very introverted. I've done a lot of work around the human design and found out this what you call a split definition.
Oh,
so
amazing.
I like a lot of self-reflection time on my own. I never really understood why. I just knew I did. But too much of that and not enough connecting with other people can really run out.
Yeah.
Might run my battery down. So I need that balance. And working in a co-working space, having that private office gives you the best of both worlds. And when you've got that energy balanced, you know your values, you know your capacity, and you know what your strengths are, then you start to feel comfortable and feel, okay, yeah, I've got something I can offer other people. And I think until you've got that clarity and the structures in place, it's impossible. You can pretend, I've pretended, but it's really, really hard. I think you need those structures and the clarity first. And I really wanted to help other people, especially who had limited time, limited capacity, limited energy. I have problems with my energy sometimes, and it can be quite limiting. So help other people with real life businesses that fit around their capacity. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're also,
Be it co-working operators or other micro businesses.
We're also, as people, evolving in a world of work that we've never experienced or seen done before. So generations that went before us were in careers for 50 plus years. Maybe some of us grew up in households where one parent wasn't working and they were at home with us all the time, So we're now navigating a world where most of us change career. I talk about the 10-year career. Most people kind of evolve so much in one role that actually they might completely change path or maybe add something else in. And we're used now to just navigating a few different fields. Whereas before you were in one industry for years, you knew your network really well. Whereas we do a lot of starting over, a lot of learning, a lot of skills development, and we're still keeping the show on the road at home. So that's the number one thing that's going to drain is your energy. So just, us all navigating how to manage ourselves. And even to your point about human design, far be it from human design like 50 years ago that anybody knew what their learning style was or how they best could manage their energy. But we have to do that now. I actually think that's like not a luxury, it's a necessity if we want to get the most out of the lives that we're building, and what's available to us, because
And
it's the
also,
other thing, there's so much available.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think actually the human design comes in as to how we relate to other people and understand them, because we're all so different.
Yeah.
So
And
there's a big piece there. And that juggle.
Yeah. It's the modern Myers-Briggs. We were always doing some element of getting to know yourself and your personality. But it becomes more nuanced and we can dial it in, I think, in a better way now. I'm a manifesting generator.
A manifesting generator.
That's why I like to jump around in
I'm
the conversation.
Yeah.
And
I'm a reactor. I found out I'm a reactor.
Are you? I wait to respond.
Yeah. So I can't initiate stuff. I have to wait to respond. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Yeah. Thank God you're here,
What's this
Graham.
one?
You can initiate everything.
What's what is it?
We'll, we'll get Graham's human design done. We'll put it in the show notes. Suzanne, do you have any predictions on what Graham's going to be?
I
I'd say
don't think
projector,
he'll be a
maybe.
generator.
Yeah, he could be a
Projector
generator.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't be
Yeah.
offended, Graham, because you don't know what these
I
things
don't know
say.
what I actually don't know the context. So yeah, no, maybe I'll pause my offence until later on.
Yeah, you can resume it when you find out what
Yeah.
we're talking about.
Yeah.
No, it's fascinating, and I think considering that co-working spaces are so human-centric, which is what we keep speaking about, you'd be wondering, God, why is my community gelling so well, or why are they not gelling so well? And maybe we've not taken into account how people operate, how they learn. You know, we saw that at PropTech, actually, Graham. Somebody was in there and she was speaking about neurodivergence, and
Yeah.
that she
Yeah.
has an awareness of what her community actually really needs, because she's chatted with them about it, and then she's set up kind of cues and situations in the environment for them that really cater to them. Like one, you know, she said there's kind of a dev team or focus work people basically, and she gave them a kitchenette because they found that if they went downstairs for a coffee, they'd stay there for 2 hours, guilty as charged. So like she just gave them a coffee beside the desk so that if they're like in their focus zone, they just turn, grab their coffee, go back to the desk, because they will lose their flow, you know.
So do we need to bring pre-vetting personality tests into the onboarding process in the co-working space?
Well, if Suzanne does it, just leave them in, and if it's not going to work, they'll gently, naturally filter out, which I think is probably the most.
I don't think it's personality so much as values.
Okay.
And you can kind of tell who they gel with when you're doing that whole onboarding side of things. Because I think actually the diverse personalities mix well, unless they're really loud and
Yeah.
eccentric. Yeah, we have had a few that just didn't work out. But I think a mix is always good. It's more balanced.
Yeah, for sure.
And it keeps things interesting. You need to be pushed a little bit outside your zone and as well, you know. It's good for you. If you were chatting to an operator when you are out speaking with operators, Suzanne, what's the most kind of common challenge that you're hearing at the moment, and how do you typically advise people?
The juggle. When I'm out with operators who are more independent, it's definitely the juggle of everything they have to do and all the hats they have to wear, and the limited time and the energy comes into to play there as well. You know, you can be working away on some sort of strategic thing, business model thing you're working on, and then you'll get that knock on the door. The toilets are blocked, the heating system's packed up, the Wi-Fi router's gone down, and you have to drop everything. You do. You've also got the whole relationship side of things. You've got the money side of things. There's a whole array of wardrobe of hats and worries that come alongside it. And then you've also got the elements that you love and the magic side of it. So it's balancing everything. And the increased overheads, rightly so, is a big worry at the moment as well.
Yeah.
And retention, member retention.
But I suppose sometimes one of the things actually that came up at Berlin was the overexposure to larger clients.
Yes.
You know, so one crowd was saying that they wouldn't go more than 40. I actually toured a place in Manchester where they said they wouldn't go more than 20% of, you know, of exposure to a single client before they start saying, right, you need to move on. Because I've worked in co-working spaces where I've seen startups expand to such a part where you can't get into meeting rooms anymore, and they start defining the culture. Is that something you've had to tackle, Suzanne?
Yeah, we did right at the start. It was more from a cultural perspective. So we had a lovely, open, almost family environment. And then especially with corporates, they can come in with their own culture. It's different if they're corporate remote workers and there's just one or two of them. Because yes, they have their company culture, but that's generally remotely. And then they engage more with the co-working feel. But I think if you've got bigger businesses that outgrow the space, that can really dominate the whole feel. The feel, the sound, the noise. There's lots of different elements at play there as well.
Yeah.
And yes, obviously the infrastructure, they're taking up more of your facilities as well.
We spoke to an operator and he told us that he actually had to leave a huge client go because they wanted to stay with them, but they didn't have the space for them, and they went across the road. He's an independent operator. They went across the road to a huge brand, and he was like, it killed me a little bit, but what can you do? Because the fit wasn't there anymore. And in fact, they've been able to get funding and extend into another floor, and the community was strong enough that the company is going to come back because they can offer them a bigger space. So a bit of a happy ending to that one. But yeah, tricky when you've been an independent operator and you've built that really close tie with them, and you have to let them go.
A question kind of in and around that space as well, Suzanne, is obviously what we're seeing now is the co-working was, an open plan, lots of desks, a few meeting rooms on the side. That was the offering, and it was a mix of how do you sell the desks. What we're starting to see now is a bit more reconfiguration back to the own door office as the HR managers become more interested in bringing it into co-working into a part of their infrastructure. So what we are starting to see, and I think you referenced offices yourself, where in addition to your offering recently, how do you make sure that the people in the offices engage with the wider community? Is that a difficult thing to do, or have you ever had an issue with that, or is it even necessary? Do you just let them off to their own office?
Again, I think it comes back to that onboarding process and introducing people. Some of them are more the corporate remote workers. You can try and entice them, but more often than not, they just want to use the offices and get on with their work and go home at the end of the day. And it also, even with the local businesses and the freelancers, it depends on what's going on with their businesses, how much time they have. But I find they're very engaged. We have one company, Brack Tours, who's been with us for 12 years now, and they've often led events, organised events. We are partnered up on sustainability initiatives, so very closely tied there. I think it has to be a joint thing. I think you have your anchor members who really help with that sort of thing. So I'm based on the top floor, for example. I try and cajole things up here, build those foundations, and they would really work on the middle floor. And then we've got our lounge areas on the ground floor. So I think it's trying to evolve people and keep on checking in and asking them what they need and introducing them. And yes, it comes down to those breakout spaces and bumping into people.
I know that the one thing in Berlin everybody had in common, regardless of whether they were real estate or operators, was numbers. And there's that stat out there that, 52% of operators are profitable?
57. And I distinctly
57?
remember it being 51 in Porto, which was 2 years ago. So it's climbing,
an
hopefully.
increase.
But then I didn't get the background to the numbers, and I would question how many of those of the 43% that are profitable, how many of them are designed to be profitable when you have so many in the industry that are not for profit. So we have to be careful, I think, in what we measure in co-working. I think one of the KPIs that was thrown out as a folly is occupancy. It was a Spanish gentleman. He said that occupancy was a number he used to speak to his stakeholders, but when he looked at the numbers, they weren't adding up. So now they don't. Occupancy it's just not a measurement for them anymore. It's pounds and pennies, essentially. So yeah, that was a key thing about. Maybe that's to say that there's more. Maybe there's an increase in commercial interest in co-working rather than a reduction of profitability across the industry.
Could be that too, yeah. I was curious, Suzanne, when you hear a stat like that around profitability in spaces, what's your take on it?
Well, as a business owner, it's obviously crucial, but it doesn't smack success. It doesn't smack impact, because you could be profitable. People could be paying for your offices, but they might not be there. And to me, that isn't a successful business. I want to see something that's thriving and people are working together. But everyone has a different interpretation of that. And I can guarantee your members at that conference will have different interpretations. Carsten is doing another co-working survey.
He presented.
And yes, he asks about profit. Yeah. But I think he's doing another one following up. And yes, he asks about profitability and capacity, but it's also very human-centred. How often are they turning up? When are they turning up? What is it that they're looking for? So it's going much deeper into that. And I think that will speak to a lot more operators across the board.
I was curious what metric you use in the Hub in Newry to judge success.
I think that it would be longevity, Anne-Marie, definitely. And how long
Smiley
people have been with
faces
us.
in the airport,
Yeah.
the panel of smiley faces and how many greens you get.
Yeah.
How satisfied are people and
And
content?
also relationships in the wider ecosystem.
Yeah, the network.
Because I know some spaces and they measure companies scaling and moving on. Obviously, the startup focused incubator type stuff, that's their metric, whereas Suzanne's is clearly maintaining that long-term relationship. So as we were saying at the top of the chat, like you need to define what success looks like for you in your space or your network of spaces that you hope to build out. But we find occupancy a difficult one to measure, because again, define occupancy. If you think of it from a census perspective, even in a domestic instance, if I'm staying over in my mum's the night they do the census, that kind of all these movements are taken into consideration. We can't do that in co-working yet. So like if you rock into the Ludgate and middle of August, you're going to see all the desks full. Pretty much. If you rock in December, there'll be less people here, but the desks are paid for, as you said. With the likes of myself and Anne-Marie, who kind of and the rest of our fixed deskers. I came across a space in Dubai on LinkedIn, and like Dubai, everything is shiny in Dubai. It was an amazing co-working space. All the seats were very fancy, plush, and then the workstations looked amazing, and they had double monitors, really, really nice. Booked out, fully paid for, nobody there, not one person there, nobody ever turns up. It was all international companies wanting a footprint in Dubai, and they were willing to pay
Sell
for that.
the desk again.
The desk again.
Yeah. Sell it over and over.
Yeah, happy
Gym
days when
memberships.
somebody, like an airplane, and somebody turns up. Oh, we'll find you one. Suzanne, it's been absolutely fantastic to speak. I'm sure that as tech develops and AI develops, there will be lots of new and clever ways to measure the success of spaces. But I think we're all agreed that the human element is still very much front and centre. So thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful to have you join us.
Thanks.
And we're looking forward to
Thank
seeing
you.
the continued success for the Hub.
Thank you very much. And yourselves.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to Flex That Works. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. Connect with us on LinkedIn, watch the full episode on YouTube, and you can explore free tools and resources over at baseworks.co. This is Flex That Works, powered by Baseworks, here to help you scale your workspace, making it simpler and less stressful.